What reality will Ukraine face after Donald Trump takes the helm of the White House? Or can we not yet predict it? And how painful are the strikes we continue to inflict on the Russian dictator's military targets? Boris Tizengauzen, a political strategist, is with us. Boris, hi, good to see you. Zelenskyy was among the first to congratulate Trump on his de facto victory, with over 90% of votes counted, though no official announcement has been made. Zelenskyy called Trump's victory a special day and even compared the 47th President Donald Trump to the 40th American President Ronald Reagan. Let's hear what the Ukrainian leader had to say. In general, it was extremely important for us in Ukraine and throughout Europe to constantly hear the words of the then 45th President of the United States about peace through strength. And when this becomes a principle of U.S. policy, America and the world will definitely benefit from it. Not without reason that Reagan is mentioned. People want certainty, they want freedom, they want a normal life, and for us it is a life without Russian aggression, with a strong America, a strong Ukraine, and strong allies. We have interaction at the team level, and we appreciate the bipartisan support of the United States. We discussed all the points of the victory plan at a meeting in New York, in Washington, in the Congress, in the White House, on defense and the economy. We have the potential for stronger cooperation. CNN writes that Ukraine will face a harsh reality after Trump's victory, as Trump is fickle and unpredictable, especially on complex and long-running issues such as foreign conflicts. At the same time, Foreign Policy writes, even Trump can't afford to lose the war in Ukraine, as a victory for Putin would weaken U.S. power. So, how much Reaganism is there in Trump's stance, and will he really let a bunker dictator win? If he offers a deal, on whose terms? The fact is that the United States is not going to lose. They are not going to lose at all, because they are not involved in this war. Yes, they are on the side of Ukraine. They are helping us, for which we are always grateful. But not losing to the United States does not mean not losing in some respects for Ukraine. I understand that the scenario that will be offered to Donald Trump by his advisors is one of the options, a compromise scenario. No one is even talking about pushing Putin back to the borders of '91 so that he could pay reparations. Now they are talking about a ceasefire on the line of contact, then negotiations, and only then will they decide. But of course, no one recognizes Russia's control over the occupied territories legally. But you and I understand that next year's assistance to Ukraine will be less or much less than this year's.
Або значно менше, ніж навіть у цьому році. Тоді, у Росії, ми з вами про це, Ірина, вже говорили, у Росії вона, на жаль, не зменшується. Вона може зменшитись, якщо буде Трамп ще одну свою обіцянку втілить.
In Russia, unfortunately, it is not decreasing. It may decrease if Trump fulfills his promise and cuts the price of oil in half, which is one of his election promises, to reduce the price of oil to $50 or even $40 per barrel.
Але ж це дуже суттєво повпливає на можливість Росії продовжувати війну. Це дійсно так. Ще і у Трампа
This will have a very significant impact on Russia's ability to continue the war, indeed. Trump has a lot more leverage to do this because he has a much better relationship with Saudi Arabia, which, by the way, can do this if the U.S. increases oil and gas production. Trump had very warm relations with Saudi Arabia, and I believe they remain so. He sold them weapons.
Тому що Трамп і зброю, і навіть в Об'єднані Арабські Емірати, і в Саудівську Аравію він продавав зброю, він накладав вето на санкції проти Саудівської
Vetoed sanctions against them.
Пана Хашоггі.
Trump can do this, but will he want to do it? Because if Russia and Iran cut off oil revenues, it will significantly affect the ability to continue both Russia's war in Ukraine and the war in the Middle East.
Це дуже суттєво впливає на можливість продовжувати і війну Росії в Україні, і війну на Близькому Сході. Тому в нього є.
So he has the tools, but whether he will use them is another question. As for the plans, there are several options on the web now. They are somewhat similar, but there are differences. For example, one of the versions is about Ukraine and NATO. Ukraine should forget about NATO for 20 years.
Є одна версія, що Україна на 20 років забуває про НАТО. Ну, я так вважаю, що це порахували, коли здохне ось цей.
This plan seems meant for when the situation changes. The Wall Street Journal says we're postponing for 20 years and freezing the line, likely for as long as Trump is in office. Boris, how realistic is this plan? Is any plan realistic? The key point is Ukraine is losing, as Putin won't be able to start another major war soon due to Russia's exhaustion. But if sanctions, including on energy, are lifted immediately, it will create problems. Russia has already been pushed out of the European gas market. We understand this, and the coal industry is facing big problems. It is on the verge of collapse. That is why the key thing now is to prevent even the unfreezing of sanctions. By the way, today, Petro Poroshenko presented his plan or red lines. I don't quite understand why, but a politician has the right to do so. Although, of course, no one asked, but they did offer it. Perhaps they are already preparing for the elections?
Ніхто не питав, але вони запропонували. Ну, так, да, буває. Ну, що, може, вже до виборів готуються.
You know, I have this observation. People who want to push their point of view often say, who is asking you this? But everyone has the right, even Yulia Volodymyrivna or anyone else. You and I are all citizens, all equal. So we have the right to discuss this and even set some red lines for the authorities. This is an interesting opportunity for the government, and I have always believed that constructive criticism is a driver for the government. Because without criticism, there is a danger of breaking away from reality, from public opinion. And this is very dangerous. But at the same time, speaking about Putin and what Trump should do and whether he can end the war,
бачимо, що водночас, говорячи про Путіна і про те, що має зробити Трамп.
In particular, former NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen notes that Donald Trump's unpredictability could be the key to achieving peace in Ukraine, Politico reports.
Непередбачуваність Дональда Трампа може стати ключем до досягнення миру в Україні, заявив колишній генсек НАТО Андерс Фог Расмуссен. Передає про це Politico.
In his opinion, Trump should tell Putin to stop the war. And despite Trump's positive statements about Putin, in 2016, the Kremlin celebrated Trump's win. But this time, as Verstka reports, Putin and his clique only congratulated him through the Russian Foreign Ministry, signaling tense relations. Putin likely awaits an official greeting. Meanwhile, Trump has received congratulations from around the world. with many admiring, fearing, or hoping for something from him.
Чекає, де офіційне привітання. Всі привітали. Люблять Трампа, бояться Трампа, хочуть чогось від Трампа, та, але вау.
But there is no greeting from the dictator, and this raises the question, why did his face twist? Is he really afraid of the ultimatum?
Від диктатора нема. А чого обличчя перекосила? Боїться дійсно ультиматума. Чого? Де?
Why isn't Peskov popping the champagne? Something is whispering about Putin's plans to congratulate Trump. After all, they have made a lot of efforts to make the United States their main enemy in the information space. You know, I read today that very soon Biden will pass the codes from the Russian entrances to Trump, and he will be able to act there, and now it's his business, because the United States is the main player in the whole war. Yes, of course, that's why this situation is not entirely clear to me now.
Для мене взагалі не дуже зрозуміла була така проста річ. От Трамп каже, він, до речі, хоче влупити по Ірану, перш за все, по Китаю, це головний ворог. Але якщо ціна на...
Trump says that he also wants to strike at Iran, especially China, because it is his main enemy. But if energy prices are cut in half, it will be painful for Russia.
Додаткові санкції проти Ірану запровадив, і вони дуже доволі ефективні були, вибачте. І я вже як цей вопля відоплясна, були. І ще Трамп зараз говорить про зниження цін.
What surprises me is that Trump added sanctions against Iran, and they were really effective. And now he's talking about lowering the price of oil. When we were hitting Russian refineries, this Biden administration told us that we needed to keep the world price up to influence the situation, and Trump is proposing to cut it in half in 6 months.
За півроку навпіл поріжуть ціну. Чому?
Why not reduce the price of oil if it is Russia's main source of income, the main source of funding for the war? I don't want to praise Trump in any way. I'm just trying to evaluate his actions rationally. Indeed, sanctions against Iran are good, lower oil prices are great, and establishing relations with Saudi Arabia is also good.
Він з Путіним дружбан, він там ще щось, Маск цей, там про помилку Хрущова, чи про що ще говорить.
As a matter of principle, he does not want the wars to continue during his term. He wants to end them. But there is one problem. These dictatorial regimes help each other, even with troops. We have already seen North Korean troops involved in the conflict, and this is just the beginning.
Завершення. Трамп, він не хоче, щоб за його каденцію війни взагалі протягнулися на наступну, вже іншого президента.
They are exchanging troops, and Russia is contractually obligated to send its troops to the Korean peninsula. The club of dictators is now closely interacting, and Putin has actually started the flywheel of an arms race.
Тут є проблемка, чому? Тому що довели клуб диктаторів до такого стану, коли вони вже по кругу друг другу допомагають, навіть військами. Ми вже бачили північно-корейські війська вже.
The whole world is now arming itself, and it is only a matter of time before these arsenals are used. This will definitely happen in the next decade, because the polarization of the world has already started.
І, до речі, згідно договору, який Росія підписала з Північною Кореєю, Росія теж повинна буде відправити війська на Корейський півострів. Тому клуб диктаторів, він зацементувався, він отримав більш...
Here's the club of dictators, and here's the collective West. But when the war starts, it is only a matter of time.
Фактично, цей маховик гонки озброєнь запустив. Зараз весь світ озброюється. Тому, коли ця зброя знадобиться, коли ця рушниця, яка висить на стіні, буде стріляти, ніхто не знає, але десь найближчим часом.
It will be larger, because the two clubs will be at war with each other. and it could start on the Korean peninsula, although China is very reluctant to do so now, because it is not yet ready for a major war.
І все. І коли вже буде наступна війна, це питання часу, але вона буде ще більш масштабною, тому що вже два клуби будуть воювати. І взагалі це може початися на Корейському півострові. Але Китай би...
As a result, instead of knocking dictators out of the club one by one, with soft and hard power,
Але ж, ось до такого стану, тобто, замість того, щоб
we have seen how this club has become united and cemented.
М'якою силою, жорсткою, санкційно. Фактично провели таку політику, що цей клуб, він згуртувався і зацементувався.
If we don't stop it, wars will continue to escalate. Trump's attitude towards China is far from positive, with possible economic pressure or even a trade war. Jinping congratulated Trump on his election win, but as CNN reported, his message was brief. Chinese MFA respects the choice of the American people. The Chinese leader had a telephone conversation with Donald Trump, but we have no details about it, although the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman said the parties hope for peaceful coexistence with the United States. However, should Xi Jinping be hopeful? To such a peaceful existence, and what should he do to keep it that way? Perhaps there will be no peace, but more tough sanctions against China. There is another lever for Trump, the ability to put pressure on China. For example, draconian sanctions against China, which are already affecting China's economy, which is facing major problems. In addition, the One Belt, One Road project, an initiative of Xi Jinping, is currently on hold because of the war. If you put pressure on China with sanctions, additional duties, and technology restrictions, you can raise questions. China is actually saving Putin's economy by buying Russian oil and supplying dual-use goods to Russia. And you can say, either we impose tough sanctions or you stop Putin.
Якщо натиснути жорстко на Китай санкційно, додаткові пошлини, там ще щось, обмеження технологій, класичну таку, але жорстку політику стримування проводити, то можна сказати Китаю, я там зараз без деталей, можна сказати, Китай фактично зараз рятує економіку Путіна, купуючи нафту російську. І багато чого ще. І постачаючи товари подвійного призначення в Росію.
Believe me, China has all the levers to put pressure on Putin and make him stop.
Істоту вгамуєш, я зараз про Путіна. І все, повірте мені, у Китая є всі важелі для того, щоб натиснути жорстко на Путіна і сказати, що все, закінчуй.
India, which also buys a lot of Russian energy, will not be able to provide such volumes. It does not need such volumes. It will not be able to buy both its own and what is intended for China. That's why Putin is raising the key rate now, not out of the blue. There are now 3 big companies or 1 big industry and 2 companies that can support the economy, but they are all on the brink. This includes the coal industry, Kamaz, Samolet, companies that build a lot of housing and lend money, but they are already on the verge of collapse. Things are not so good, and if the price of oil drops further, it will be a very clear stress signal to Putin.
Це буде дуже такий стресово зрозумілий натяк Путіну, що все давай.
So let's be clear. We are practicing on Russian military targets, and this should not be forgotten in terms of our strategy. I know you always keep track of our effective strikes so that the Russians don't feel at ease. 3 ships in 1 strike. The Forbes explains the importance of attacking Russia's Caspian flotilla and says that even if Donald Trump cuts Ukraine off from American aid, which is unlikely to happen, we will still have ways to fight our war. So on November 6th, a Ukrainian A-22S aircraft from Aeropract, guided by Ukrainian intelligence, struck Russia's Caspian flotilla, 700 miles, if 100 kilometers, from our front line. Forbes analyst reports that the explosion damaged 3 ships, including 2 Cheetah-class frigates and a Buyan corvette, marking one of the largest strikes by Ukrainian A-22 drones. The damaged ships could account for almost a third of the Caspian flotilla's forces, he notes, and explains that if we were also allowed to use long-range weapons, it would be good. We can quickly adjust our long-range weapons and are already doing so. This strike is significant, and the Caspian flotilla may soon become a submarine fleet, or what's left of it. By the way, I don't quite agree with Forbes that even if the United States can't help us, Europe can't replace the United States. Therefore, if there is even less help, as for UAVs, it's clear that we can produce them. We have a very large line. But what about the front? Where are the shells? Where are the barrels, guns, tanks? I mean, the Russians will be going, and we will be launching UAVs. Well, I don't agree with Forbes that if the United States stops helping us, we will only be able to launch UAVs. This is ridiculous. As for the strike on the Caspian flotilla, yes, we have already done it, by the way. This is our know-how. This plane, which is packed with explosives and additional fuel tanks, can fly a long distance. We have already used such aircraft when we attacked Alabuga in Tatarstan, where chessboards are produced. At that time, these planes actually destroyed the dormitories where those who produced these shaheeds lived. This is our know-how. Why the Caspian flotilla? Because it is very dangerous for the Russians.
Цей літак легкомоторний, начинений вибухівкою, і він додаткові баки з паливом, і він може летіти там доволі на велику відстань. Ми вже застосовували ці літаки, коли ми били по Алабузі, там, де в Татарстані виробляють шахеди. Тоді знесли фактично цими літаками
Through the Caspian Sea, the Russians deliver weapons, missiles, and chess pieces from Iran, and they have even tracked the entire route from which port, which ship, to which port. Now the Caspian Sea is no longer safe, and this creates additional logistical problems. It would have been better, of course, to hit a ship with weapons, but this is also a very good strike. 3 ships with 1 plane, very accurate. So respect to everyone who launched this plane. Well done. We'll keep practicing. You hit all the enemy's military targets so accurately. And we hope that there will be help and decisive steps from the United States to remind the world that they are just, and for such terrorists, they are the evil policeman and the boss. Thank you, Boris, for the conversation, your time, and all your work. See you next week. Goodbye. Boris Tizengauzen, political strategist. Subscribe to Boris's YouTube. In big blue letters, there is even more analysis and interesting details of hot news. Boris analyzes, explains to you and me. And subscribe to YouTube 24 as well. Almost 8 million of us. Just a little bit left to this number. Take care of yourself. Believe in the armed forces of Ukraine. See you, and we will win.